Mom, why is that man crying?
The little girl looked up from her chocolate croissant, her tiny fingers still dusted with crumbs. Across the narrow street, a tall man in a dark overcoat stood completely motionless. His shopping bag had slipped from his hand. The fresh flowers inside scattered across the wet pavement. Rain soaked his shoulders. Cars passed. People brushed by him without a second glance. But Kang Ji-hoon never noticed, because standing beside the little girl was the woman whose funeral he had attended exactly 5 years earlier, Naomi Brooks, his wife, the woman he had accused of destroying his company, the woman he had buried with his own hands, the woman he had spent the last 5 years apologizing to at a gravestone. She was alive. Ji-hoon blinked once, twice. His mind refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. This had to be another cruel trick his grief was playing on him. For years he had imagined seeing Naomi everywhere. In subway stations, airport terminals, restaurant windows. Each time he chased after a stranger, only to discover another woman with similar hair. Another familiar smile. Another heartbreaking disappointment. But this was different. Because Naomi had the small scar above her left eyebrow. A scar she'd gotten while teaching neighborhood kids how to ride bicycles in Atlanta when she was 19. He had kissed that scar on their wedding day. The woman across the street had the same scar. Exactly where it should be. There was no mistake. The little girl tugged gently at Naomi's sleeve. "Mom?" Naomi wasn't listening. She had seen him too. The color drained from her face. The paper cup in her hand slipped to the sidewalk. Coffee spread across the concrete. Neither of them looked down. 5 years disappeared in a single heartbeat. Ji-hoon remembered everything. The first time he'd met her. The way she'd laughed at his terrible English jokes. Their late-night walks along the Han River. The promise they'd made beneath cherry blossoms. The day he put a ring on her finger. The day he looked into her tear-filled eyes and called her a traitor. Without warning, Naomi whispered something to the little girl. The child nodded. Then Naomi turned. She ran. Not fast. Not desperately. But with the quiet urgency of someone who had spent years preparing for this exact moment. Ji-hoon's heart exploded with panic. "Naomi." His voice echoed through the street. People turned. She didn't. Instead, she gripped the little girl's hand tighter. The child struggled to keep up. "Stop." Ji-hoon pushed through pedestrians. Ignoring the bodyguards shouting behind him. Ignoring the traffic. Ignoring the reporters who instantly recognized one of Korea's youngest billionaire CEOs sprinting through downtown Seoul. All he could see was Naomi. She reached the corner first. A delivery truck turned into the intersection. For 3 endless seconds. It blocked his view. When it passed, Naomi was gone. So was the little girl. Ji-hoon spun in every direction. Nothing. Only strangers. Umbrellas. Rain. And silence. Then, he noticed something lying beside the curb. A tiny pink mitten. He picked it up. Still warm. It must have fallen from the little girl's coat. Inside, neatly stitched in blue thread, were 3 simple words. Made by Mommy. His fingers began to tremble. The mitten was handmade. Naomi had loved sewing. Whenever she became anxious, she would sit by the window with fabric and thread instead of talking. She once joked that handmade gifts lasted longer than expensive ones. Because every stitch carried a piece of the person who made it. Ji-hoon closed his eyes. The mitten smelled faintly of lavender. Naomi's favorite scent. It was real. She was real. Then something else struck him. The little girl. She couldn't have been older than 4. Maybe 5. Dark curls framed her face. Bright brown eyes. A smile that felt painfully familiar. Ji-hoon replayed the moment in his mind. The shape of her nose. The way she tilted her head when she asked questions. The tiny dimple on her right cheek. His breathing became uneven. "No," he whispered. "No." He counted backward. 5 years. The funeral had been 5 years ago. If Naomi had disappeared while his knees nearly gave out. She hadn't been alone. She had been pregnant. The child, the little girl, could only be his daughter. The daughter he never knew existed. A passing taxi splashed rainwater onto his trousers. He didn't move. He couldn't. 5 years. His child had taken her first steps. Spoken her first words. Celebrated birthdays. Started school. Lost baby teeth. Fallen asleep after nightmares. Learned to read. All without him. Not because he had died. Because she had been hidden from him. Or worse, protected from him. His chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. For the first time in years. The billionaire CEO of Kong Global felt utterly powerless. Chairman. His head of security finally caught up. Are you hurt? Ji-hoon looked at the mitten. Then at the empty street. I found her. Sir? My wife. The guard hesitated. Chairman. Mrs. Brooks passed away 5 years ago. Ji-hoon slowly looked at him. No. His voice was steady now. Someone wanted me to believe that. That evening, Ji-hoon drove alone. No chauffeur. No security convoy. No assistance. The destination was one he visited every month. A quiet hillside cemetery overlooking the sea. He walked the familiar stone path carrying the bouquet he had bought that morning. White lilies. Naomi's favorite. He stopped before the polished headstone. Naomi Brooks Kong. Beloved wife. Forever loved. His eyes lingered on the engraved dates. Then, very gently, he placed the tiny pink mitten beside the flowers. His voice barely escaped. If you're really alive. Whose grave have I been visiting for 5 years? The sea answered with silence. Before we continue, where are you watching or listening from today? Let me know in the comments. I love seeing people from all over the world gathering around these stories. Because what Ji-hoon still doesn't know is that 5 years earlier the woman standing before him didn't fake her death because she stopped loving him. She disappeared because the man she loved looked into her eyes, believed a lie, and destroyed everything they had built together. And the person responsible was still sitting in Ji-hoon's office, pretending to be his most trusted friend. 5 years earlier, before the funeral, before the accusations, before a little pink mitten became the only proof that his daughter existed. There had been a time when Kang Ji-hoon believed he was the luckiest man in Korea, and he owed it all to a woman who had never cared about his money. Ji-hoon first met Naomi Brooks on an ordinary Tuesday. She had arrived in Seoul from Atlanta only 8 months earlier on a corporate exchange program between Kong Global and an American technology firm. Unlike everyone else in the executive building, Naomi wasn't intimidated by titles. She wasn't impressed by luxury cars. She didn't even know who Kang Ji-hoon was. The first time they met, she accidentally spilled iced coffee all over his white dress shirt. The entire lobby went silent. Executives stared in horror. One assistant nearly fainted. Everyone expected the young CEO to explode. Instead, Ji-hoon looked down at the ruined shirt and laughed. Naomi blinked. You're laughing? He smiled. I have 12 more exactly like this. She folded her arms. Well, that's a ridiculous number of white shirts. He laughed harder. That was the beginning. Over the following months, they kept running into each other. Sometimes in the company cafeteria. Sometimes in the elevator. Sometimes during late meetings when everyone else had already gone home. Unlike the executives around him, Naomi challenged him. You know what your problem is? Ji-hoon looked up from his laptop. I have several. Which one today? You answer emails while people are talking. I can multitask. No. She reached across the table and gently closed his laptop. You can ignore people efficiently. He stared at her. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not his board. Not his assistants. Not even his father. Oddly, it felt refreshing. Their first date wasn't planned. Both had worked until nearly midnight. Every restaurant nearby had already closed. The only place still open was a tiny convenience store. They bought instant ramen, microwave dumplings, 2 cans of coffee, then sat outside on plastic chairs overlooking the Han River. Naomi looked around. So, the richest man I've ever met takes women to convenience stores? Ji-hoon grinned. I was hoping you'd be impressed. I am. She nodded seriously. Very impressive. He smiled. Then she burst into laughter. Before long, he was laughing too. It was the happiest he'd been in years. They married 18 months later. The wedding was elegant but surprisingly small. Naomi insisted on inviting the elderly couple who owned the convenience store. They fed us on our first date. Their family. Ji-hoon agreed without hesitation. The newspapers called it the wedding of the year. But the happiest moment wasn't when they exchanged rings. It happened afterward. When the photographers finally left. Naomi slipped off her expensive heels, looked at Ji-hoon, and whispered, Now we can finally be ourselves. For 2 wonderful years, life felt almost ordinary. They cooked together every Sunday. Even though neither was particularly good at it. They argued over which movies to watch. Naomi loved old romantic comedies. Ji-hoon preferred crime thrillers. She usually won. Every Friday night, they walked through the same neighborhood market. The vendors learned their names. One elderly woman always gave Naomi extra strawberries. You'll need these when you have children. Naomi would blush. Ji-hoon would pretend not to hear. They weren't in a hurry. They believed they had time. Then, one promotion changed everything. After leading a successful cybersecurity project, Naomi was appointed Director of International Systems. The promotion made headlines inside Kong Global. Not everyone celebrated. Vice Chairman Lee Chang-ho watched quietly from his office. He had served Ji-hoon's father for over 30 years. To the public, he was loyal, wise, almost family. Behind closed doors, he saw Naomi as a threat. Not because of her nationality, because Ji-hoon listened to her. And a CEO who listened was much harder to manipulate. 3 months later, Kong Global prepared to unveil a revolutionary semiconductor design worth billions. Only 7 people had access to the project. Security was tighter than ever. Encrypted servers, biometric locks, round-the-clock monitoring. Then, 48 hours before the announcement, the designs appeared in the hands of a rival corporation. The board erupted into chaos. Share prices plunged. News channels called it the largest corporate leak in years. Inside the emergency meeting, Vice Chairman Lee spoke first. This wasn't an outside attack. He slowly looked around the room. It was someone on the inside. The cybersecurity team reviewed access logs. Every executive sat silently as names appeared on the screen. One by one, they were cleared. Until only one remained. Naomi Brooks. The room fell silent. Ji-hoon stared at the monitor. There has to be another explanation. The lead investigator looked uncomfortable. The files were downloaded using Mrs. Kang's credentials. Naomi immediately stood. I didn't do this. We have the logs. They were altered. Vice Chairman Lee folded his hands. Are you suggesting our entire security division is lying? I'm saying someone framed me. Several directors exchanged nervous glances. Ji-hoon looked directly at his wife. Naomi. She met his eyes. You know me. I do. Then believe me. The room seemed to disappear. Only the two of them remained. For a long moment, Ji-hoon wanted to believe her. Then the investigator placed another folder on the table. Bank records. An anonymous offshore account. $10 million transferred only hours after the leak. The account was under Naomi's name. She stared at the documents. Her face turned pale. I've never seen this account. Vice Chairman Lee sighed heavily. I prayed this evidence wasn't real. Naomi looked desperately at Ji-hoon. It's fake. Please. You know I would never. Ji-hoon interrupted quietly. Can you explain the transfers? I can't explain something that isn't mine. Then why is your name on it? I don't know. Her voice cracked. But I swear to you, I didn't betray you. Silence filled the boardroom. Every eye turned toward Ji-hoon. He wasn't just a husband. He was the CEO. One decision would define both roles. Vice Chairman Lee leaned closer. If you defend her without evidence, the shareholders will lose all confidence in your leadership. The words landed exactly where Lee intended. Ji-hoon closed his eyes. When he opened them again, fear had replaced trust. He slowly removed his wedding ring, placed it on the conference table, and spoke the sentence that shattered 3 lives. Until this investigation is complete, you're suspended from Kong Global. Naomi stared at him. Disbelief, then heartbreak. Not because she lost her job, because the man who once promised to stand beside her had chosen everyone else's version of the truth over hers. She nodded once. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I understand. She slipped off her own wedding ring, placed it beside his, then whispered, No. Her voice barely existed. You don't. She walked out without looking back. Ji-hoon watched the boardroom door close. He wanted to run after her. Instead, he remained seated. It would become the greatest mistake of his life. The boardroom doors closed behind Naomi with a soft click. No one moved. No one spoke. Vice Chairman Lee Chang-ho finally broke the silence. I'll have security escort Mrs. Kong from the building. Ji-hoon stared at the wedding ring lying on the polished table. For reasons he couldn't explain, it suddenly looked heavier than gold. Outside, Naomi walked through the marble lobby without looking back. Employees whispered. Some lowered their eyes in sympathy. Others stared as though she had become a criminal overnight. Every elevator ride, every hallway, every step toward the exit felt like another piece of her dignity being stripped away. She had spent 3 years helping build Kong Global's international division. Now she was leaving with a cardboard box. Inside it, a family photograph. A coffee mug Ji-hoon had given her that read, "World's most stubborn wife." A small cactus she somehow kept alive despite forgetting to water it. And one ultrasound appointment card. Hidden beneath everything else. She hadn't told Ji-hoon yet. She had wanted to surprise him on their wedding anniversary. 3 days from now. Instead, she carried the secret alone. That evening, Naomi unlocked the apartment she and Ji-hoon had shared before moving into the Kang family estate. She hadn't visited in months. Everything smelled exactly the same. She sat quietly on the floor, then finally allowed herself to cry. Not because of the accusations. Not because of the humiliation. Because Ji-hoon had looked directly into her eyes and chosen evidence over the woman he promised to trust. Her phone vibrated. Ji-hoon. She stared at the screen. It rang until voicemail answered. He called again. And again. 7 times. Finally, she switched the phone off. Some conversations couldn't happen while the wound was still bleeding. Across the city, Ji-hoon sat alone in his office. The building had emptied hours earlier. The city lights reflected against the windows. He replayed every second of the board meeting. Naomi's voice. "You know me." He rubbed his eyes. He did know her. Didn't he? Then why had doubt arrived so easily? A knock interrupted his thoughts. Vice Chairman Lee entered carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. "You've had a difficult day." "I'm not drinking." Lee placed 1 glass on the desk anyway. "You made the only decision a CEO could make." Ji-hoon remained silent. Lee continued carefully. "If she's innocent, the investigation will prove it. And if she's guilty, you save the company." The words sounded reasonable, logical, measured, exactly the way manipulation often sounded. The next morning, news exploded across Korea. CEO's wife accused of billion-dollar corporate espionage. Television stations replayed security footage of Naomi leaving headquarters carrying her cardboard box. Reporters camped outside every Kang property. Social media exploded. Some defended her. Most condemned her. The trial had already happened. The verdict had already been decided. And no courtroom had even opened. Naomi sat quietly inside a small prenatal clinic on the edge of Seoul. The doctor smiled gently. 8 weeks. Naomi looked toward the tiny heartbeat flickering on the monitor. So small. But very healthy. A tear escaped before she realized she was crying. The doctor handed her a tissue. "Is the baby's father coming?" Naomi smiled faintly. "He doesn't know yet." When she returned home, someone had been inside. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing broken. Yet she immediately noticed one thing. The family photograph on the bookshelf had been turned upside down. Her heart raced. Slowly, she checked every room. Empty. Then she found an envelope lying on the kitchen counter. No stamp. No address. Only her name. Inside was a single photograph. It showed her entering the prenatal clinic earlier that morning. Scrawled across the back were 7 handwritten words. "Leave Korea, or your baby dies too." The photograph slipped from her trembling hands. Someone knew. Someone had been watching her. That same evening, Ji-hoon arrived at Naomi's apartment determined to fix everything. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Silence. The elderly landlady opened the neighboring door. "Are you looking for Naomi?" "Yes." She moved out. His heart sank. "When?" "This afternoon." "Where?" The woman shook her head. "She didn't say." "Did she leave anything?" The landlady thought for a moment. "Only this." She handed him a small white envelope. Ji-hoon's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was his apartment key. Nothing else. No letter. No goodbye. Just the key. He understood the message immediately. She wasn't coming home. 3 days later, the police called. A rental vehicle registered under Naomi's temporary insurance policy had been found at the bottom of a coastal cliff. The ocean had swallowed almost everything. The driver's body was badly damaged. Identification relied on dental records. The wedding ring. Personal belongings. Ji-hoon refused to believe it. Until he saw the ring. The simple platinum band he had placed on Naomi's finger during their wedding. He collapsed before the funeral even began. Present day. 5 years later. Ji-hoon sat inside his office staring at the tiny pink mitten lying on his desk. His private investigator, Choi Sung-min, quietly entered. "You wanted everything we have on Mrs. Kang's death." Ji-hoon didn't look up. "I want everything. The police files. The autopsy. The financial investigation. The original espionage case. The security footage. Everyone who testified. Choi hesitated. That's thousands of documents. I don't care if it's 1,000,000. He finally looked up. Find one mistake. Just one. Because if Naomi is alive. He picked up the mitten. Then every truth I've lived with for 5 years is a lie. 3 days later. Choi rushed into Ji-hoon's office carrying a thick folder. I found something. What? The espionage case. What about it? There was one person whose security credentials were never audited. Ji-hoon frowned. Who? Choi slowly turned the page. One access log had been deliberately excluded from the investigation. Only one. The owner of those credentials. Vice Chairman Lee Chang-ho. Ji-hoon's face slowly lost its color. The man who had convinced him to doubt his wife had quietly erased his own digital footprints. And for the first time in 5 years, Ji-hoon realized he hadn't just lost Naomi. He had been used to destroy her. Ji-hoon didn't sleep. For 3 nights, the lights in his office never went out. Every security log, every email, every financial transfer, every surveillance recording from 5 years earlier covered the conference table. The more he searched, the less he recognized the company he'd inherited. Because someone hadn't simply framed Naomi. Someone had spent years building the perfect trap. And he had willingly pushed the woman he loved into it. Private investigator Choi entered carrying another folder. I think we know how they did it. Ji-hoon immediately stood. Tell me. Choi spread several documents across the table. The security logs that identified Naomi weren't original. Ji-hoon's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? They were generated after the leak. That's impossible. It should have been. Choi pointed to a series of timestamps. The files were supposedly downloaded at 9:14 p.m. Ji-hoon nodded. So? The security server rebooted at 9:09. What does that matter? It takes 12 minutes before the server can authenticate employee credentials after a reboot. Ji-hoon's breathing slowed. So at 9:14. No one could have logged in. Choi nodded. The timestamps were manufactured. Ji-hoon sank into his chair. 5 years. 5 years of believing Naomi had betrayed him. 5 years of mourning a woman who had died believing her husband no longer trusted her. He whispered to himself, what have I done? Across Seoul, Naomi watched Emma chase pigeons through a neighborhood park. She smiled despite herself. Emma had inherited Ji-hoon's determination. She decided to catch a butterfly. She wouldn't stop until she had tried 100 different ways. Mama? Emma ran over proudly holding a tiny yellow flower. For you. Naomi accepted it like the most precious gift in the world. It's beautiful. Emma tilted her head. Why are you crying? Naomi hadn't realized tears had escaped. I'm happy. Emma smiled. Happy people cry? Sometimes. When? When they finally realize what matters most. Emma seemed satisfied with the answer. Children often accepted truths adults complicated. Not far away. A black SUV watched from across the street. The driver lifted a phone. They're still here. A calm voice answered. Don't touch the child. What about the mother? Not yet. The CEO is getting closer. Silence. Then the voice spoke again. If he discovers the whole truth. None of us walk away. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon drove to the only person who had been with Naomi during her final days at Kong Global. Her former assistant. Kim Hannah. She now owned a small bookstore outside the city. When she saw Ji-hoon enter, her smile disappeared. You have a lot of nerve coming here. I need your help. You needed it 5 years ago. I know. No. Her voice remained calm. You don't. She walked behind the counter. I watched Naomi defend you every single day. Even when people insulted you. Even when your own board questioned your decisions. She protected you. And when she needed you once. You abandoned her. Every sentence landed like another stone. Ji-hoon didn't argue. Because she wasn't wrong. I came to apologize. Hannah shook her head. I'm not the one you owe. I know. Then why are you here? Because I think someone framed Naomi. She laughed bitterly. You think? I know. Her expression changed. Ji-hoon continued. I need to know if she ever said anything before she disappeared. For a long moment, Hannah said nothing. Then she walked upstairs. When she returned, she carried a small cardboard box. She left this with me. Ji-hoon looked surprised. She expected she'd need it someday. Or hoped she never would. Inside were notebooks, photographs, sticky notes, and one sealed envelope, written across the front, "Only if Ji-hoon learns the truth." His hands began shaking. He slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Ji-hoon, if you're reading this, then somehow you've finally discovered I wasn't the one who betrayed you. I prayed that day would come. I just never believed I'd be alive to see it." His vision blurred. He continued reading. "The day you accused me, I wasn't crying because I lost my career. I was crying because I watched the man who knew me better than anyone choose fear over love." Ji-hoon closed his eyes. Every word hurt. But he forced himself to continue. "I wanted to tell you something that morning. I even carried the photograph in my purse all day." He unfolded another piece of paper. An ultrasound image, dated 5 years earlier. His breath caught. On the back, Naomi had written, "Happy anniversary, Daddy." The room spun. She had known. She had been carrying their baby? While he accused her of treason. He gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. Tears streamed down his face. "I accused my pregnant wife." His voice broke completely. "Of selling my company." Hannah quietly placed another item on the table. A voice recorder. "There's one more thing." Ji-hoon pressed play. Naomi's voice filled the room. Soft, gentle, fragile. "If you're hearing this, then I need you to promise me something." She paused. "Don't hate Ji-hoon." He froze. Hannah looked away. Naomi continued. "He's not an evil man. He's a grieving man surrounded by people who profit from his pain." Ji-hoon's shoulders shook. She had defended him. Even after everything. The recording continued. "If he ever discovers the truth, tell him." A long silence followed. Then came the sentence that shattered what remained of his heart. "I never stopped loving him." The recording ended. The room became unbearably quiet. Ji-hoon left the bookstore carrying the box. Not because it contained evidence. Because it contained the last version of Naomi that still believed in him. He sat inside his car for nearly an hour. Then he made a decision. One that would cost him everything. He picked up his phone and called an emergency board meeting. His assistant answered immediately. "For tomorrow morning?" "No. In 1 hour." "Sir, that's impossible." "No." Ji-hoon's voice had never sounded calmer. "It's overdue." Exactly 1 hour later, every director gathered inside Kong Global's executive boardroom. Vice Chairman Lee entered with his usual confident smile. "Chairman, this must be important." Ji-hoon looked around the room. Then quietly placed Naomi's wedding ring in the center of the table. Every executive stared at it. Finally, Ji-hoon spoke. "For 5 years, I believed my wife betrayed this company." He looked directly at Lee Chang-ho. "I was wrong." Lee's smile disappeared. "And tomorrow morning," Ji-hoon continued, "I'm turning every document we have over to the Financial Crimes Unit." The room erupted. Board members shouted over one another. Lee remained perfectly still. Then, very slowly, he smiled again. "You've made a terrible mistake." Ji-hoon met his eyes. "No. I made that mistake 5 years ago. And I'm done paying for your lies." Lee leaned forward. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You think this ends with a board meeting?" Ji-hoon didn't answer. Because at that exact moment, his phone vibrated. An unknown number. He answered. A little girl's frightened voice whispered through the speaker. "Mama?" Then the line went dead. The boardroom fell silent. Ji-hoon stared at his phone. The little girl's frightened voice echoed in his ears. "Mama?" Then, the call disconnected. For a split second he couldn't breathe. He immediately called the number back. Number unavailable. Again. Nothing. His hands trembled. Not from fear for himself. For Emma. He had never even held his daughter. And now someone knew she existed. Vice Chairman Lee watched him carefully. "Everything all right, Chairman?" Ji-hoon slowly looked up. For the first time in 5 years. He wasn't looking at a mentor. He was looking at the man who had stolen his family. Without another word, Ji-hoon grabbed the evidence box and walked out of the meeting. Lee smiled to himself. He knew exactly where Ji-hoon was going. Outside, Private Investigator Choi was already waiting. "The call?" Ji-hoon nodded. "They found Naomi. They know about Emma." Choi immediately opened the car door. "We've been tracking Lee's communications." "What did you find?" "One of his shell companies owns an abandoned shipping warehouse near Incheon Harbor." "You think they're there?" "No. I think that's where they'll take them." Meanwhile, Naomi sensed something was wrong long before she saw the black van. She and Emma had just left the grocery store. Emma skipped happily beside her carrying a small paper bag filled with strawberries. Mama? Yes. When can we make pancakes again? Naomi smiled. Saturday. You promised. I know. Emma grinned. You always keep your promises. The words pierced Naomi's heart, because 5 years earlier, she had made another promise. To never let anyone hurt her daughter, no matter the cost. A black van rolled slowly beside the sidewalk. The passenger window lowered. Naomi recognized the man instantly. Park Dusek, former head of Kong Global Security. He had testified against her during the espionage investigation. He smiled coldly. Mrs. Kong. Naomi grabbed Emma's hand. Run. The little girl didn't ask questions. She simply ran. Exactly as Naomi had taught her. Never freeze. Never look back. Just run. The van doors burst open. 2 men jumped out. Naomi shoved Emma toward a crowded playground. Find Officer Kim. It was the name of the neighborhood police officer who often greeted Emma after school. The child disappeared into the crowd. One of the men chased after her. Naomi intercepted him. He shoved her violently onto the pavement. Her head struck the curb. Blood trickled down her forehead. Still, she got back up. Again. And again. Every second she delayed them, Emma got farther away. Across town, Jihoon's convoy raced through traffic. His phone rang. Was Choi. We found the van. Location. Han River Children's Park. Jihoon slammed his foot harder onto the accelerator. By the time he arrived, police sirens already echoed through the neighborhood. Parents clutched frightened children. Officers searched every direction. Jihoon jumped from the car. His eyes desperately scanned the crowd. Then he saw her. Emma. Curled against a female police officer. Crying. Safe. His legs nearly gave way. Nearby, paramedics surrounded Naomi. She lay unconscious inside an ambulance. Blood stained her hair. Jihoon froze. 5 years. He had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. Never like this. He slowly approached the ambulance. The doctor stopped him. Family only. Jihoon's voice cracked. He couldn't finish. Because legally, he wasn't anything anymore. Not her husband. Not even recognized as Emma's father. The words caught in his throat. Emma looked up. Her eyes met his. Quietly. She walked over. The little girl studied his face. You were crying the other day. Jihoon nodded. Yes. Why? He looked toward Naomi lying inside the ambulance. Because I lost someone very important. Emma thought for a moment. My mama says, people aren't really lost if you keep looking for them. Jihoon closed his eyes. A tear escaped. Your mama is very wise. Emma smiled proudly. She knows everything. Hours later, Naomi regained consciousness. The first face she saw was Jihoon's. He immediately stood. You should leave. Her voice was weak. I can't. You can. I won't. She slowly looked away. I didn't ask you to save me. No. You saved Emma. Silence. Finally, Jihoon whispered, I'm sorry. Naomi laughed softly. Not because it was funny. Because it was heartbreaking. Do you know how many nights I imagined hearing those words? He lowered his head. Every apology I rehearsed sounds meaningless now. Because it is. She wasn't cruel. She was honest. You can't apologize your way through 5 years. I know. You can't give Emma back the birthdays you missed. I know. You can't erase the day you looked at me like I was a stranger. His eyes filled with tears. I know. She finally looked at him. And yet, you still came. He nodded. I'll keep coming. Even if you never forgive me. 3 days later, Jihoon shocked the entire business world. At a nationally televised press conference. He walked onto the stage carrying no prepared speech. Only one folder. Every news outlet in Korea broadcast live. Reporters expected him to announce another corporate acquisition. Instead, Jihoon bowed deeply before the cameras. I owe someone an apology. Flashbulbs exploded. My wife was innocent. Gasps spread through the room. I accused her publicly. I failed her privately. And I allowed my position as CEO to become more important than my duty as a husband. The room became completely silent. I cannot undo what I did. But beginning today, I resign as chairman and chief executive officer of Kong Global. Every reporter stood. Questions flew from every direction. Jihoon ignored them. I will spend the rest of my life correcting the injustice my decisions created. He stepped away from the podium, leaving behind a fortune, power, influence, everything except the one thing he truly wanted: his family. Over the following months, Jihoon never asked Naomi to come home. He never pressured Emma to call him Dad. Instead, he simply showed up. Every Saturday morning, he volunteered at the community center where Naomi taught coding classes to underprivileged children. He swept floors, moved chairs, served juice. No cameras, no interviews, no publicity. Sometimes Naomi barely acknowledged him. He accepted it, because redemption wasn't earned through grand gestures. It was earned through consistency. Emma noticed first. Mama? Yes. Why does Mr. Kong keep helping everyone? Naomi smiled faintly. Because he's trying to become a better man. Emma tilted her head. Can people really change? Naomi looked through the window. Jihoon was outside fixing a broken playground swing. Alone. Without telling anyone who he was. She answered quietly. Sometimes. When losing everything teaches them what truly mattered. One rainy afternoon, Emma approached Jihoon while he was planting flowers outside the community center. She held out a small lunchbox. My mama made too much kimbap. Jihoon's hands froze. For me? Emma nodded. You forget to eat. He smiled through tears. How do you know that? She giggled. Mama says people who carry guilt always skip lunch. Jihoon laughed for the first time in years. It was small, painful, real. As Emma walked back toward the building, she suddenly turned around. Mr. Kong? Yes. My teacher says families don't always start together. Sometimes they find their way back. Before he could answer, she ran inside, leaving Jihoon standing in the rain, holding the first meal his daughter had ever given him. And for the first time in 5 years, hope no longer felt impossible. It simply felt earned. For nearly a year, Jihoon never missed a Saturday. He never asked Naomi for another chance. He never brought flowers. Never tried to explain away the past. He simply arrived before everyone else. He unlocked classrooms, repaired broken desks, cleaned whiteboards, helped children with homework, then quietly left. Sometimes Naomi wondered if he even realized she was watching. But she always did. She noticed the expensive watches disappear. The luxury cars replaced by an ordinary sedan. The designer suits traded for simple sweaters. The billionaire CEO who once commanded thousands of employees now smiled because a 7-year-old had beaten him in a game of chess. Power had changed him once. Loss had changed him even more. One chilly autumn afternoon, Emma walked home from school holding Jihoon's hand. It wasn't planned. Naomi had been delayed at work. Jihoon happened to be volunteering nearby when the principal called. As they crossed the street, Emma suddenly asked, "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask me anything." She looked up at him. "Were you a bad person?" The question caught him off guard. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he thought carefully. Finally he nodded. "I made very bad choices." "You yelled at Mama?" "Yes." "You made her cry?" "Yes." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "My mama says people who say sorry should also change." Jihoon smiled sadly. "Your mama is right." Emma squeezed his hand. "I think you're changing." Those 4 words meant more to him than every award he'd ever received. That evening, Naomi opened the front door. Emma rushed inside. "Mama? You know what?" "What?" "Mr. Kong burns grilled cheese." Naomi laughed. "He does." It was black. Jihoon rubbed the back of his neck. "I got distracted." Emma giggled. "So we ate cereal." Naomi couldn't remember the last time she'd seen her daughter laugh that hard. When Emma disappeared upstairs, silence settled between the two adults. Jihoon finally spoke. "I found something." He handed Naomi a thin folder. She hesitated before opening it. Inside were court documents, arrest records, financial reports. Every executive involved in the conspiracy had been convicted. Vice Chairman Lee Chang-ho had received a lengthy prison sentence. Millions of dollars had been recovered. The charges against Naomi had been officially dismissed. At the bottom of the final page, one sentence stood out. "Mrs. Naomi Brooks Kong is formally exonerated of all allegations of corporate espionage." Naomi stared at the document. 5 years. 5 years carrying a name the world believed belonged to a traitor. Now, the truth existed on paper. But somehow, it didn't erase the pain. Jihoon seemed to understand. "It isn't enough." She looked at him. "No. It isn't. A week later, Ji-hoon received an unexpected visitor. Chairman Kang Song-tae, his father. The old man slowly entered the modest apartment Ji-hoon now rented. He looked around in disbelief. You left the mansion. Yes. You resigned. Yes. You gave away controlling shares. Yes. His father sighed deeply. All because of one woman? Ji-hoon looked directly at him. No. Because I forgot what kind of man she believed I was. The old chairman remained silent. Ji-hoon continued. For years I blamed Naomi. I blamed grief. I blamed pressure. I blamed everyone except the only person responsible. Myself. His father lowered his head. I should have stopped Lee years ago. Ji-hoon frowned. You knew. The old man's eyes filled with regret. I suspected. But I trusted him more than my instincts. Ji-hoon laughed bitterly. So did I. For the first time, father and son understood they had made the same mistake. Trusting the wrong man. And doubting the right people. Winter arrived. Snow covered the rooftops of Seoul. Emma's school announced its annual family festival. Each child was asked to bring both parents. Emma quietly folded the permission slip and placed it inside her backpack. She didn't show Naomi. She didn't show Ji-hoon. That night, her teacher called Naomi. I'm worried about Emma. Why? She told another student she only has one parent. Naomi's heart broke. The following evening, she knocked on Ji-hoon's apartment door. He looked surprised. Naomi? She held out the permission slip. He read it slowly, then looked up. I understand. No. She shook her head. You don't. She took a deep breath. Emma shouldn't have to choose between us because of our mistakes. His eyes widened. Are you asking me? Yes. Come to the festival. As her father. For a moment, neither spoke. Ji-hoon whispered, Thank you. Naomi smiled gently. Don't thank me. Earn it. The day of the festival. Emma stood nervously behind the stage. Children laughed with their parents. Some held both hands. Others carried balloons. Emma kept looking toward the entrance. Then, she saw them. Naomi. Walking beside Ji-hoon. Not holding hands. Not pretending the past never happened. Simply. Walking together. For her. Emma burst into tears. She ran across the gymnasium. This time. She didn't stop at Naomi. She threw her arms around both of them. Other parents applauded. Teachers quietly smiled. Naomi looked at Ji-hoon over Emma's shoulder. Neither said a word. None were needed. Some moments spoke for themselves. Later that afternoon, the festival held a drawing competition. The theme was simple. My family. Emma spent nearly an hour coloring. When she finished, she proudly handed the picture to her teacher. The drawing showed 3 people standing beneath a cherry blossom tree. A tall man. A smiling woman. A little girl holding both their hands. Above them, she had written in large colorful letters. Families can break, but love can help them grow again. Naomi covered her mouth. Ji-hoon looked away, trying unsuccessfully to hide his tears. Emma noticed. She smiled. I made your shoulders bigger. Ji-hoon laughed. Why? So Mama always has someone strong to lean on. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Naomi stood alone on the apartment balcony. Ji-hoon joined her a few minutes later. The city lights stretched endlessly below. I've been thinking, Naomi said softly. He waited. I don't know if I can ever love the man you became 5 years ago. Ji-hoon's expression fell. Then she continued. But I've started respecting the man you've worked so hard to become. He closed his eyes. Those words were more than he deserved. And far more than he had hoped for. She looked at him. I'm not promising a future. I'm only willing to stop living in the past. Ji-hoon nodded. That's enough. No. She smiled faintly. It's a beginning. 3 months later, spring returned to Seoul. Cherry blossoms painted the city in soft shades of pink. The same season. The same flowers. The same time of year Ji-hoon had first met Naomi. Only now, everything felt different. Not perfect, just honest. Emma was the first to notice. Her parents smiled more. They talked longer. Sometimes they even laughed together. There was still awkwardness. Still silence. Still memories that hurt. But there was no longer anger. One Saturday morning, Emma sat between them during breakfast. She looked from Naomi to Ji-hoon. Then sighed dramatically. What? Naomi asked. Emma folded her tiny arms. You two are very slow. Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? My best friend's parents got back together in 2 weeks. Naomi nearly choked on her coffee. Jihoon burst into laughter. Emma looked genuinely confused. What? I've been waiting forever. Naomi smiled despite herself. Relationships aren't races, sweetheart. Emma nodded thoughtfully. So, how much longer? Neither adult had an answer. A few days later, Jihoon received a phone call that surprised him. It was Chairman Kang Songtae. I need to see you. I'm at the old house. When Jihoon arrived, his father looked older than he remembered. The once powerful businessman now moved slowly with the aid of a cane. Without speaking, he handed Jihoon a small wooden box. I should have given you this years ago. Inside lay an old pocket watch. It had belonged to Jihoon's grandfather. Engraved inside were the words, "A man who cannot protect his family has already lost everything." His father looked away. I spent my life teaching you how to build an empire. A long silence followed. I forgot to teach you how to protect a marriage. Jihoon's eyes filled with tears. You don't owe me an apology. I do. The old man nodded. I failed both of you. Meanwhile, Naomi received an email from Atlanta. The technology company where she had once worked offered her a position as regional director. The salary was generous. The benefits were excellent. Most importantly, it would give Emma a fresh start. Far away from old headlines, old accusations, old pain. That evening, she sat alone staring at the offer. She had every reason to leave. But one question refused to leave her mind. Would I be running away, or moving forward? The following weekend, Emma's school hosted a charity picnic beside the Han River. Children flew colorful kites across the open field. Parents laughed together beneath blooming cherry trees. Naomi watched as Jihoon patiently helped several children untangle their kite strings. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He didn't even know she was watching. A little boy accidentally ripped his own kite. Instead of buying another one, Jihoon sat on the grass for nearly an hour helping him repair it with tape and glue. Emma smiled. I told you. Naomi looked down. Told me what? People really can change. Later that afternoon, Emma wandered toward the same convenience store where Jihoon and Naomi had shared their very first date years earlier. The elderly couple still owned it. The old woman recognized Naomi immediately. She rushed around the counter and embraced her tightly. My child. I prayed you were alive. Naomi hugged her back through tears. The old shop owner smiled toward Jihoon. I've never seen this stubborn man stop coming here. Naomi looked surprised. What do you mean? The elderly man chuckled. Every Friday. For 5 years. He sat in those same plastic chairs. He always ordered 2 cups of coffee. Naomi slowly turned toward Jihoon. You came here? He nodded. Every week. Why? Because. He smiled sadly. It's where I remember you happiest. Naomi couldn't speak. For 5 years. While she believed he had forgotten her, he had been sitting in the place where they first fell in love. Alone. Waiting for someone who wasn't supposed to be alive. That evening, as the sun began to set, Emma insisted they walk along the Han River. Exactly where Jihoon and Naomi had once dreamed about their future. Halfway across the bridge, Emma suddenly stopped. Oh. What is it? Naomi asked. I forgot my backpack. It's back at the picnic. I'll get it, Jihoon offered. Emma smiled mischievously. I'll come too. Before either adult could respond, she grabbed Jihoon's hand and pulled him away, leaving Naomi standing alone. 5 minutes later, Jihoon returned. Without Emma. He looked around. Where's Emma? Jihoon laughed. I've been tricked. Naomi frowned. What happened? Apparently. He pulled a folded note from his pocket. She planned this. Naomi unfolded the note. Written in colorful crayons were the words. Dear Mama and Dad, my teacher says brave people tell the truth. So here's mine. I don't need a perfect family. I already have my favorite family. Please stop being scared. Love, Emma. Naomi laughed through tears. That little girl? Jihoon smiled. She's smarter than both of us. Silence settled between them. The river reflected the orange glow of the setting sun. Finally, Jihoon spoke. I've rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times. So have I. I don't deserve another chance. No. You don't. He nodded. I know. She stepped closer. But. You've spent the last year proving you understand why. Another step. I don't trust words anymore. I trust actions. Jihoon whispered. Then I'll spend the rest of my life showing you. Naomi searched his face. Not for the billionaire. Not for the CEO. Not for the man who had broken her heart. She searched for the young man who once laughed after she spilled coffee on his shirt. The man who ate instant ramen beside the river. The man she had fallen in love with before fear and pride changed him. She saw him. Not completely. But enough. She reached into her handbag. Pulled out something wrapped in a small cloth. Jihoon frowned. She unfolded it carefully. Inside were 2 wedding rings. And hers. The same rings they had left on the boardroom table 5 years earlier. I kept them. He stared in disbelief. I thought you threw them away. I almost did. She smiled softly. But something told me. People deserve one chance. She looked directly into his eyes. Only one. Jihoon's hands trembled. He didn't reach for the ring. Instead, he asked the question that mattered most. Are you sure? Naomi looked toward the river. Toward the city. Toward the future. I'm not choosing the man you were. She turned back toward him. I'm choosing the man you fought to become. Slowly, she slipped her ring back onto her finger, then held out his. Jihoon's eyes overflowed with tears. With shaking hands, he placed it on. No speeches. No dramatic declarations. Just 2 broken people, choosing to begin again. 1 year later, the Kong mansion no longer belonged to the Kong family. Jihoon had sold it. Instead, the 3 of them lived in a modest house overlooking a quiet park. Emma rode her bicycle in the driveway every afternoon. Naomi had launched her own cybersecurity company, helping businesses protect themselves from the kind of fraud that had nearly destroyed her life. Jihoon never returned as CEO. Instead, he established the Naomi Brooks Foundation, providing scholarships and legal assistance to employees who were falsely accused or wrongfully dismissed. Its motto was engraved at the entrance. Truth deserves a second chance. Every year, on the anniversary of the day they met, the family visited the little convenience store by the Han River. They still ate instant ramen. They still laughed about the coffee accident. And the elderly couple still insisted dessert was free. One evening, as the cherry blossoms drifted across the river, Emma snapped a picture of her parents sitting on the same plastic chairs where their love story had begun. She smiled at the photograph. Some stories ended with revenge. Some ended with justice. But the strongest stories ended with people becoming better than they once were. Because forgiveness doesn't erase yesterday. It simply refuses to let yesterday steal tomorrow. As they walked home hand in hand, Jihoon glanced at Naomi. Thank you. She smiled. For what? For giving me a second chance. Naomi squeezed his hand gently. No. She looked ahead where Emma was running beneath the cherry blossoms. We gave it to each other. The petals danced through the evening air. 5 years had stolen their happiness. 1 year of truth. 1 year of sacrifice. And one little girl who refused to stop believing in her parents had finally brought them home. If this story touched your heart, remember this. Trust is fragile, love requires courage, and sometimes the greatest act of forgiveness is giving someone the chance to become the person they should have been all along. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances.